Vamos al siguiente speaker, que es México, y Chris creo que nos va a presentar, digamos, la visión desde allí.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to speak in English and present in English because I need the practice these days. Okay, so that's going to be good for me. Okay, let's share the screen. Good. Okay, I hope you're all seeing that. Well, firstly, as it's great to see so many people here. It's really, really encouraging that there's been so much interest in this meeting, this introductory meeting. Hopefully, one of the big things we hope for is to keep all this momentum going. I'm going to present the perspective from the Mexico side. I've got to really, really apologize that nearly all of my focus will be on optical microscopy. There is a big electron microscopy community here. I haven't really been in much contact with that community, and I haven't really been able to get many statistics organized around that. But it is a community, it is organized, and as you'll see, maybe that's one of the problems we hear. We generally, for the size of the research sector we have here, the level of organization is quite poor until now. So, so who do I represent? I'm representing the National Lab of Advanced Microscopy, which actually has 3 sites. So it has, the first site was set up in the Biotechnology Institute of the National University, and then subsequently a couple of in the central, one of the main teaching hospitals in Mexico City, and also in a major research site, CICESE in Ensenada. So there's sort of 3 laboratories that form part of the National Microscopy Laboratory Network. Obviously, there's much more going on than that. So we have a number of other core facilities around the country, major core facilities. What do we call a major core facility? That generally are open access, generally have what would have high-end equipment, and also organizing training activities. So they're mainly spread around the country. You can see that one of the things I mentioned, put in the chat earlier, we have a big concentration in and around Mexico City. So centralization is a bit of a problem here, and that's one of the things we need to address. So we have, overall, there are a number of other institutes and labs that have confocal microscopes. This is only an estimate, but possibly around about, I guess, 50 confocal microscopes in Mexico. I guess not all of those are going to be working. Not all of those are being used in biosciences. There's quite a lot of materials research here. And really the minority of those will be in open access facilities. But that gives you more or less an idea of the distribution of the resources within Mexico. So what are the characteristics of the Mexican bioimaging community? What support do we have for infrastructure? Well, there has been a national laboratory scheme run by the National Funding Agency. There was very strong support between 2011 and 2019. There was an expansion. It's a family of around about 75 different laboratories. Not all of those, but that's in all areas. That's from public policy, humanities, sustainable housing, coastal research, protection of the coast, materials research, aerospace support. Of those 70, 75 national labs, I guess about 10 will be involved in imaging. But obviously that actually, although that's a big family, there's still a limited participation. Not all of the laboratories can be national laboratories. So, but since again since 2020, we've been waiting quite patiently for a reboot of that system. So in the last change of government, there's been a big reshaping of the whole scientific system in Mexico, and that's still ongoing. So we're kind of treading water for a while until that gets going. Other support, there's a lot of institutional funding, direct institutional funding. So a lot of the red dots in the previous map will be supported by their own institutes. There can be some funding from other government agencies and funding from research grants, mainly at the individual laboratory level. So that's generally where the funding support comes from. The bioimaging community, we do have a Mexican Microscopy Association. It's a traditional academic society. It's largely focused on electron microscopy. It does offer some training courses and is affiliated to these associations. I need to be, I mean, I don't wish to formally criticize anyone, but I think I would probably classify them pretty much the same as Humberto. mentioned the Columbia Society. It's not, I would guess, one of the most active societies, but they are actually offering a training course today. So there are particularly training courses are some of the things they offer. We have a Mexican Optics Academy. That's again another academic society, very much focused on the optical physics and photonics side. It's integrated and well organized, but not really much of bioimaging focus. So let's say if you wanted to know what fluorescent protein should I use for this application, or how often I should image to avoid killing my cells with fluorescence, they're not really going to know. So it's very strong actually for the development and the innovation side. That community is very good. So I would say that the bioimaging infrastructure community is not organized, and the wider, and that's amongst the core facilities even. The wider bioimaging community in life sciences, I would really say that there's also no significant organization. That's a real weakness that we have in Mexico, and it's something we're trying to address and getting going with. And of course, Latin American bioimaging can be a big part of the assistance in that. How important is bioimaging in Mexico? So I did a little survey, I did a little literature search. So between 1960 and 2016, papers that were published in Life Sciences and Medicine that employ optical microscopy, of those at a global level, 11% used confocal microscopy, but in Mexico, that percentage rises to 14%. So there's a very active community. The research community use a lot of microscopy. They use a lot of microscopy, certainly up to the level of confocal microscopy. But if we change the search terms to advanced techniques, and those are the sort of search terms, I didn't just limit myself to these, I put in homologs as well, homophones, etc., multiphoton, fluorescence correlation spectroscopy, bioluminescence, what I would call more advanced techniques, that percentage changes drastically. So the percentage at a global level that use what I would call advanced techniques is around 1.9% of the optical microscopy papers, and in Mexico that drops to 0.2%. So we can see that there's a good adoption of microscopy techniques, but when it comes to advanced techniques, there's still a long way to go, and there's still a long way to get adoption of those techniques. I did a survey of the core facilities, the red and the black ones you saw on the map. And yeah, in the last 5 years, 445 principal investigators or research groups have received services in the last 5 years. That's quite a large number. And obviously, a number of those PIs and research labs will be sending multiple people. So I would estimate at least probably around about 1,000 projects have been supported in the 5 years by core facilities. So they are very heavily used. That is a feature of the bioimaging community here. Okay, so what sort of technologies do we have available? These are all estimates. And when I say available, there's sort of two levels of available. Available as in they're present in Mexico. I would say these numbers are probably an underestimate of the totals. And then available as in open access facilities, I would say that these numbers probably are an overestimate. But again, I mentioned before, probably laser scanning confocal microscopes, probably about 50 with maybe 20 in open access centers. There's, as far as I know, 7 nanoscopes. One of those will be instead, 4 of those are single molecules or palm storm scopes, 2 of those with SIM. And as far as I know, there are 2 ARIScan systems. We have around about 10 TURF microscopes, around about 10 multiphoton microscopes. As far as I know, 3 spinning disk confocal systems, 4 to 5 light sheet systems. I think there are 2 to 3 commercial systems, and at least I know of 2 open SPIM systems. There are 2 imaging cytometers or flow microscopes, as far as I know. That's pretty major kit, pretty major equipment. As far as, again, all this is as far as I know, 2 optogenetic systems. We have 4 bioluminescence imagers, 2 of those of which are whole animal, and others are at a cellular level. 1 high throughput system, 2 fluorescence lifetime imaging systems, 5 laser dissection microscopes, and 1 Raman spectroscopy microscope. There are probably more of those because, as I said, the optical physics community is quite active, so there are probably more than that. So that gives an idea of the sort of techniques that are available and in what sort of numbers. Training, education, and outreach activities, how are they organized and coordinated? Well, again, similar to the situation in Colombia, there's no really formal structure or organization of any kind of training activities at the national level. there's no specific funding available to set up those activities within Mexico. There are basic, intermediate, and advanced courses and workshops. They're usually organized by core facilities or as part of institutional training programs, normally offered and advertised around the country. And they're usually very well attended, at least in our experience in the National Lab. Whenever we organize a course, it's usually heavily oversubscribed. So there is a big, like latent demand for receiving training within Mexico. Some academic undergrad and postgrad programs include bioimaging themes, usually as optional modules. Induction training for users of core facilities is probably a big area where a lot of users find their support. Financial support for attending training events is hard to find. The scarce funds are more towards academic conferences. There is a diploma in electron microscopy offered by UNAM, and one of the ideas would be to do one for optical microscopy as well. Outreach programs are mainly organized at the institutional level, and in a survey, 90% of core facility managers strongly agree that having access to training programs would improve the services offered. I think I better speed up a bit here. What are the challenges for bioimaging infrastructure in Mexico? We did a survey of the core facility managers and staff, okay? Half of the core facilities reported diverse impediments to offering complete services between obsolete equipment, maintenance funds, and technical service in Mexico, above all for commercial equipment, and deficient infrastructure. Now, all of these are funding problems. So, but they were kind of the options I gave. When we actually opened it up and said, okay, this is the question now, how would, just write your answer in, what is the problem? The answers changed actually, and nearly a lot of the answers basically became human resource problems. So lack of staff, these were answers given by individual core managers, lack of funding, administrative burden, a lack of technical staff, lack of promotion to services to the community. So this is all kind of human resource problems. So we can see that there funding problems. Funding is always a problem anyway, but certainly human resource problems are something we need to tackle quite heavily. What can or should Latin America bioimaging be doing to help? Well, from the summary from the previous slide, it would be better training for staff. That's supporting human resource development. Having more trained staff available. That was the summary. More promotion of services, that's visibility, having people know that these services are available, where they are, which core facilities offer them, and also support for admin practices. Also, as part of this survey, we did the questions where, do you agree or disagree with this statement? And so the agreements are all to the right-hand side, all the disagreements are to the, I don't agree with that statement. Some of the answers here are very illuminating. So, is research infrastructure undervalued in Mexico? Yes, it is. Very, very strong agreement. Scientific evaluations for researchers involved in core facilities and in service provision don't take into account core facility staff contributions. So, very traditional evaluation mechanisms, and roles are diversifying. Very strong agreement there. Will exchanging experiences with peers in other core facilities benefit, improve the service? Very strong agreement. Are there technologies that interest you, but you need training before they can be offered locally? Yes. So technology, bringing in new technologies. And will attending workshops or job shadowing in other core facilities improve the service in the core facilities? Very, very strong agreement. And I kind of put in a positive control. And that was, is the service we get from equipment vendors, should that improve? Should that be better? Now, of course, nearly everyone's going to say yes, no, and say yes about that. And what I found is actually, yeah, I mean, people were in agreement, but not as quite in a strong agreement as these other things. So I regard these as very strong, sort of positive responses to the previous answers, because my positive control wasn't quite as emphatic. Okay, so I think that's it for sure. So yeah, so that's the situation in Mexico. Quite a big research community, quite a big bioimaging community, but not particularly well organized, and a lot of work to do and a lot of interaction in order to get it up to improve it for the benefit of the whole community. And I think quite a lot to offer to the Latin American community in terms of what we can put on the table and help with training and these sorts of things.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much. We have probably time for one question. Mauricio Flores say, well, there is one before, sorry. Chris, it is possible in Mexico to obtain funding for equipment in collaboration between two institutions?
Yeah, so until recently, the National Lab Scheme was absolutely conditioned on that. It had to be a collaboration between institutions, and not even so. UNAM is all over the country, the National University, but it had to be within a different. It couldn't be within the same institution, even though they're in different areas. It had to be between different institutions. So that's generally been a model that they promote. They want to see decentralization through those sort of collaborations as well. So that's been one of the models they've adopted for sure.
Okay, great. And if you are very, very short, I want to transmit the Mauricio Flores question, who say, what would be the best way to get funding for research and maintaining in this system in at Latin American scale? Is this initiative a hopeful start?
I hope it's a hopeful start. I think the best way for us to get attention to the problems of funding, certainly for maintenance of systems and for setting up new systems, will be to promote the importance of research infrastructure as a concept. I think that it's always difficult for individual labs to be able to maintain. You need technical expertise. I think always the best way to organize these resources is in research infrastructure, but I think that research infrastructure is not as valued. That came out in our survey. I think we have a problem along those lines. So I would definitely advocate that we need to promote research, the concept of research infrastructure to our governments and our funders, for sure.
Okay, muchas gracias, Chris.